Is everything in place?
You weren't supposed to relieve me.
I know, but I felt...
In the 90s, we had blockbusters such as Star Wars, Independence Day, Men in Black, and Jurassic Park. These blockbusters pushed to the boundaries of imagination and technology. The 90s and cinema were very much a decade that embraced computer graphics and new technologies. As the sun started to set on in this decade, one movie would come along that would innovate both cinematography and the science fiction as a genre. That movie was The Matrix. Directed by the Wachowski sisters, then known as the Wachowski brothers, The Matrix was a science fiction masterpiece that took audiences on an unbelievable cinematic journey. This movie follows our main protagonist, Neo, aka Mr. Anderson, on his inward and outward journey to truth. To label The Matrix with one theme would be an injustice. This movie is jam-packed with themes and metaphors. Some of those themes include, but are not limited to, technology and man's crippling dependency on it, duality and a person's struggle with the good and evil within them, the surrogate families that we come across throughout life, death and rebirth, and the struggles we endure while finding ourselves and our self-confidence. I was 18 when this movie came out. Yes, I am that old. This movie was released in 1999. You do the math. I distinctly remember the secrecy used to promote this movie. This movie was specifically marketed in a way that created a sense of mystery around it. So as moviegoers, we really did not fully understand what we were in store for. From the opening title card and all the way up until the end credits, The Matrix delivered a fantastic movie that blew audiences away and forever made its mark in cinematic culture. When I first saw this movie, I was inspired on so many levels, and still to this day, The Matrix remains one of those movies that I can watch over and over and still get inspired by it. So, what exactly makes this movie so special? Cinematography. The Matrix revolutionized camera movement and science fiction. The kick felt around the world. The movie opens with cops raiding in an apartment complex. We, the audience, still have no clue what we are in store for. As cops cautiously storm in on a young lady sitting at a laptop in a dark, abandoned room, the camera pans up, and as the cops attempt to put her in handcuffs, that is when the camera magic begins. The camera begins to move and behave in ways that we had never seen in cinema before. Many filmmakers up to this point had tried to use cinematography in a way that added depth to the narrative. Where other filmmakers tried, the Wachowskis excelled. As Trinity jumps into the air to kick the cop, the action is frozen and the camera pans around, giving us a 360-degree view of Trinity's perfect form. This one kick would become iconic and forever up the ante on how filmmakers move the camera in relationship to the narrative. This unique camera style can be seen throughout the entire movie. To achieve this iconic kick, filmmakers and cinematographers had to invent new ways of moving the camera. They achieved this by setting up a series of cameras around the character. Rather than having a single point of action, we now had a 360-degree view. The Matrix effectively used cinematography in a way that was new and innovative and perfectly added to the technology-driven narrative. In terms of cinematography and the laws of physics, this film effectively broke all the rules in a believable way, and it perfectly added to the unique style of this world. In today's comic book movies, we often see the laws of physics broken in a way that looks cheesy and unbelievable. Where these movies failed, The Matrix first succeeded.
They're watching you, Neo.
Mise en scene.
Please just listen.
A staple of any good movie is good execution of mise en scene. If we do not believe what we see, then it won't matter how good a movie's script or special effects are. In order for audiences to invest in the created reality, the mise en scene has to be believable. From this perspective, I would argue that this film perfected its visual style and every frame in The Matrix is masterfully crafted. The amount of detail that went into this movie is mind-blowing. What I think made the first Matrix stand out from the rest of the series was the careful balance between practical and special effects. In the first installment, the movie is grounded with intricate sets that are detailed and believable. The beautiful handcrafted sets perfectly balance out the special effects. As the series went on, I feel that the later movies lost sight of this and overdid the special effects, and at times that led to a cheesy, over-processed look. Throughout this film, the Wachowskis echoed certain props that further added to the depth of the narrative. Props like telephones, mirrors, and water can be repeatedly seen throughout the film. Telephones are a means for communication. I see this prop being used as a metaphor for the communication between the consciousness and the subconscious mind. Throughout the film, we often see mirrors and other reflective surfaces. As Neo goes further into his journey into self-actualization, he is often filmed in the reflections of mirrors, glasses, and the orphan's spoon. This is symbolic of his journey inwardly and having to take a good look at who he truly is and the world around him. There are also many scenes in this film and throughout the rest of the series that take place in the rain, or in relationship to some sort of water. Water is often a powerful metaphor for growth and the cycle of life. Neo's overall story arc is his death of his plugged-in self and rebirth into the woke savior of the last human race. So I can see why water would be associated with this character. Other elements that make this film masterful include lighting, sound, and acting. The lighting for this movie is dark and dramatic. The deep, contrasted lighting is reminiscent of the film noir style. This style of lighting perfectly adds to the fast-paced, suspenseful narrative. Because the lighting is used so effectively, the film tends to feel like it has a rich and thick atmosphere. Along with the lighting, The Matrix also effectively uses green and blue color schemes. The Matrix reality has a heavy green tint to it that is reminiscent of an old computer screen. Distinguishable from the Matrix green, the real world has a bluish-gray tint to it. The effective use of color adds to the overall psychology and feel of each world. To complement the lighting and coloring, this film uses dramatic scores of music and sound effects that sound futuristic. It really takes me out of a movie when the sound is off. Like the visuals, the sounds in this movie are perfectly orchestrated and bring to life the science fiction elements. Lastly, the acting in this film is top-notch. Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, Lawrence Fishburne, and Hugo Weaving are just a few of the top-notch actors in this film. By far, two of my favorite performances were Keanu Reeves and Hugo Weaving. These two actors complemented each other's delivery. Keanu approached his character with a laid-back hesitancy and nailed every fighting scene. In contrast to Neo, Hugo Weaving had an intensity to his performance that bordered on insanity. Like the good versus evil narrative, both of these actors delivered believable performances that perfectly contrasted and yet complemented each other. Prior to The Matrix, I had never heard of the Wachowskis. Outside of the Matrix franchise and their 2012's Cloud Atlas, another favorite movie of mine, the Wachowskis made a neo-noir gem called Bound. This 1996 noir film was the Wachowskis' directorial debut film. I definitely recognize the Wachowski sisters' style from The Matrix in this film. The Matrix is one of my favorite movies of all time, so finding this film was a fun treat. There were so many classical noir elements in this film, and yet the directors were able to add their own twists and turns and make the noir style their own. Violet, Jennifer Tilly, was an excellent femme fatale. To me, she had classical femme fatale characteristics, only with a twist. She was beautiful and seductive, and she was calculated and methodical. She was manipulative and used her sexuality to get what she wanted. One of the main twists the Wachowskis put on this noir-style film was having their femme fatale be gay. I loved that this movie was pretty much a middle finger to the production code of the 40s and 50s. I found the dialogue around the conversation when Caesar finds out that Violet is sleeping with a woman to be accurate. Caesar's actions towards Violet and Corky are completely homophobic. He was derogatory and truly acted like he had a wounded male ego. I loved how this movie absolutely pushed the boundaries on sexuality. Throughout the classical period of film noir, there was so much use of passive-aggressive use of homosexuality and sexism. Finally, we get a version of the femme fatale who ditches the men and has a passionate relationship with a woman. True to femme fatale nature, Violet pulls her lover into her dark and corrupt world. I found it interesting that there was no voice of reason or moral compass in this world. Violet and Corky were the most morally grounded characters in the story, and they were devious. So that says a lot about the rest of the characters. It was an interesting dynamic to watch the femme fatale rely on another woman rather than a man. In this version of neo-noir reality, the men are obsolete. It was quite a statement that all the men died in the end and the two women lovers survived. In a classical noir film, the main protagonist would not have died, but rather would have been punished for his or her crimes. The old Hays Code would have dictated the final fate of these characters. The fact that our main protagonist is a gay female is a gesture of female and gay empowerment. What makes neo-noir so much fun is that the narratives have so much more room to explore the dark nature of humanity. In Bound, we have all the drama and suspense of classical noir, but with much more freedom for deeper characters, stories, and cinematography. I personally prefer the moodiness of black and white films, but the Wachowskis do an excellent job of incorporating dramatic lighting into our Technicolor world. Generally, in black and white films, the highly contrasted colors add to the tone of the movie and can help add to the overall drama. In Bound, the directors did an excellent job using cinematography to add to the depth of the story. I noticed match-on action shots. In many scenes, the framing was off and uneven, which created tension. And even the color schemes were carefully used to effectively add to the chaotic mood. Even the music and sound effects were used in a way that added to the highly stylized neo-noir. Bound is a fun and distinguishable version of film noir. Having watched Bound after The Matrix, I can see how the Wachowskis started developing the personalized style that lent to their iconic film franchise. Lana Wachowski, born June 21, 1965, and formerly known as Larry Wachowski, and Lily Wachowski, born December 29, 1967, and formerly known as Andy Wachowski, are American film and television directors, writers, and producers. The sisters are both trans women. They have worked as a writing and directing team through most of their professional film careers. It was their second film, The Matrix, that would lead to major box office success, for which they won the Saturn Award for Best Director. They wrote and directed two sequels, The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, both in 2003, and were involved in the writing and production of other works in that franchise. Following the commercial success of the Matrix series, they wrote and produced the 2005 film V for Vendetta, an adaptation graphic novel by Alan Moore and David Lloyd. And in 2008, they released the film Speed Racer, a live-action adaptation of the Japanese anime series. Their next film, Cloud Atlas, based on the novel by David Mitchell, was released in 2012. Their film, Jupiter Ascending, and the Netflix series Sense8, co-created with J. Michael Straczynski, both debuted in 2015. The second season of Sense8 ended the series in 2018 and was Lana's first major creative undertaking with Outlive.